The wealthiest place on the face of the earth is not the banks. It is not the gold mines or the diamond mines. It is not even the oil fields. Rather, the wealthiest place on earth is the cemetery. It is in the cemetery that thousands of unrealized dreams are laid to rot. Africa is one of those vast cemeteries that is burying these unrealized dreams every day. About 80% of the population of Africans' dreams are not realized, not because Africans are unintelligent or are lazy, but because of poverty and lack of opportunity. The remaining 20% whose dreams are realized are usually those whose relatives are high government officials or who were born into the family of substance. I'm from Liberia, a small country on the west coast of Africa. I'm the 8th of 9 children. Both my parents did not go to school. My father died when I was 2 years old. The funeral was costly, and we did not have the money to carry on the funeral. My mom did everything she could to take care of us, but she was not educated. So my uncle came and took me away to live with him when I was 5 years old. He was not a rich man either, but at least he could send me to school to learn. That is the greatest asset I ever received from him. I had to go to school many times without books. He couldn't afford to buy the books. And so how I managed to study was to borrow books from my friends. And I would make copies. So I really did not have the original materials. I always had copies. That's what I used to study. But somehow I made good grades. And that is what counts. I just went to school to learn. We ate once a day, not even to get filled, but to be sustained, to make it to another day. It was a tough life. Some of my friends experienced those lives also. Some of them quit school. One of my friends in particular committed suicide. That was terrible. But I refused to quit. I knew that quitters are losers. And I wanted to make the difference. I wanted to provide the means, the springboard for other people to use. That is the struggle I went through. The most unfortunate part is that my country, Liberia, experienced a civil war. So we had to flee the country on foot at night, walking through bushes. Many times we were stopped and asked what tribe we belonged to. Many times we were tortured. And I thought that my dream of achieving and helping other people who have died, but somehow it did not die. It remains with me up to present. I live in 3 refugee camps in 3 different countries. In the refugee camps, life was also tough. There was usually nothing to eat until the United Nations High Commissioner for Refugees had to bring some supplies, food, blankets, buckets, and whatever thing, even water. And many times, the tents that we lived in were leaking. Whenever it rained, we would put buckets and pans under the rain so that the floor cannot get wet, because when it gets wet, you won't sleep. You have to sit up all night. I know of my friends that are still home that keep calling me every now and then to send some money back to them, to help them with some things, at least to alleviate some of those problems. I understand those problems because I experienced them. And whatever little I have, I will send back home. I keep thinking back when I lost my younger sister. We had been walking for days through bushes. And whenever we were resting at those places, certain people amongst us would go out to see if they can collect some food, ours, with the other people searching for food. When I returned 3 days later, my younger sister was dead. I was told that the same day we left, she got up that morning and she complained of stomach ache. There was no hospital around. There was no vehicles around. There was no telephone. There was no help. The only thing my mom could do was to sit there and hold my sister in her arms. By noon, she was in agony. By sunset, she was dead. She was buried the very next day. I did not even have the opportunity to see her body. Few days later, the armed men were heading towards us, so we had to flee. My mom refused to go. Some of the strong men among us took her and carried her on their shoulder. I can still hear her weeping. How can I ever forget? From that day on, death lived among us. Many other people got sick and died. Some got randomly selected from among us and killed. The refugee camps that we lived in, I had to go to school to finish high school. There was no money to go to school. So what I did was, I would go around and see if I can get some books from anyone and study at home. I did most of my study at home, most especially in the English countries. But when it came to the French country in a refugee camp, I could not speak French. So it was difficult for me to make any advances towards my studies. So I had to learn French. I went around and made friends with some of the young boys and asked them to teach me how to speak French. At first, it was tough. They used to laugh at me whenever I tried to repeat whatever they said. But I was learning. I didn't care for any mockery. I just wanted to learn. And so after a year and a half, I began to speak French enough to get around and see some of those schools that I could go to. But then, just as I thought that things were going to get into place, another war struck in that country. We had to move on. Spent 14 years in different refugee camps until finally, my sister and I, we wrote some letters to the United Nations High Commissioner for Refugees asking for political asylum. Luckily for us, our application was accepted and we made it to the United States of America in Phoenix, Arizona. Thank God that I'm now in a country of opportunities. Thank God that I can now say life is better. Thank God that I don't have to be awakened at night anymore with the sounds of many explosions of death. Thank God I don't have to keep looking over my shoulder to see who is following me, and that I'm not stopped at the street corner to ask what tribe I belong to. Thank God that I have medical insurance. And when I'm in emergency situations, I can dial 911 and get help. I wish my sister, my younger sister who died, had those privileges. Success should be measured by the abundance of what somebody can pass on, can give to those in need. Film is the largest and most watched means today. We are affected more by what we see than what we hear. I'm asking for help to go to this film school and study. A writer, Oscar Hammerstein, once wrote, "Climb every mountain, search high and low, follow every byway, every path you know, climb every mountain, ford every stream, follow every rainbow till you find your dream." I'm climbing, searching, fording, and following. I have refused to allow my dreams to be buried in that cemetery without being realized. To help offset living expenses, I'm receiving donations, and I should be very grateful for any assistance. I'm also in search of scholarship opportunities and any help I can get, and I'm open to any suggestions.